I want to cover a strangely accurate indicator that I came across with you guys because it's actually just flashed again, and the last times that this has happened, it generally actually resulted in really, really big moves to the upside. I want to show it to you right here before I actually go over what this is and how to get it in this YouTube video. And right here, what we've got is an indicator that shows us accumulation and distribution taking place in the market. And just focusing on each time I've dropped one of these vertical green lines, you can see that it flips into going green, right? It turns red, and then as soon as it turns green again, I drop a vertical line here on most of these instances, and you can see how it generally results in really, really, really big pushes to the upside, which is actually quite significant because if you take a look at what's going on the bottom right here, it's actually just flashed again, which is really, really interesting. And like with all analysis, the exact next thing I'm going to do in all of my YouTube videos is show you why I might be wrong, because there are a few instances where this hasn't actually worked out very well. Right here, we can see that it flashed green a couple of times, and actually it didn't result in anything particularly significant. In fact, it resulted in dumps some of these times as well, which is really important because if we take this chart and bring it on to where we are right now, putting it all into context, we want to obviously get an edge and understand what's going on in the market, right? Because it's really important as a trader to be able to understand with our long-term markers, are we starting to show signs that generally appear when the market is going up, or is this, and more importantly, when the market is going to stay going up, or is this just a move that's transient? Is this a move that's just going to kind of come and go if it's, not going to stick around for long? And again, one of the ways we can get that is looking at indicators like the accumulation distribution right here, or, things like the Ichimoku cloud. So first of all, if you want to get this indicator for yourself, all you got to do is head over to the indicator tab on the top right and type in, oh my God, my spelling is horrible. Type in accumulation distribution with markers. That's what you're going to type in right here, and you're going to select the top one here with the higher ratings, and this will bring up what I'm seeing right here on this chart. And this is the weekly time frame, and what's really interesting about this, right, overall, is this is going to take various different points of data specifically to do with if the market is seeing some accumulation and distribution, and then tell us where we could be headed. And what I really like is how significant these have been. It's really, really interesting to see how this has continued to flash on the market during really big pumps. And it's also worth noting just with this chart right here that this doesn't work on small time frames, right? We're looking at this on the daily time frame right now, and you can see how it's actually pretty unreliable. Really only the longer term time frames that we want to stick to. Monthly time frame, for example, looking very significant here indeed. If you take a look at how this has played out for Bitcoin historically, the small one not so well, but the other three looking really good. Quite a high hit rate here, to be honest, guys. It's nowhere near turning green right now, which is an important thing to keep in mind because it kind of ties in with what I said earlier about, we want to make sure that we're kind of positioning ourselves in the right place. This is really important because when we look at the chart with the short term, it looks really good, right? I mean, obviously we've been pumping up and breaking resistance like it's nobody's business, but when we kind of put all these charts into a longer term perspective, which is one of the key things I've been trying to do with you guys as the excitement is starting to set in, guys, taking a look at the fear and greed index for a second, reading of 52, and I mean, again, this isn't particularly high, it's neutral, but it's, we definitely moved up by quite a bit. We were sitting in extreme fear for a really long time, and then bam, we just kind of jumped right up into neutral territory. I'm not saying this is bad, but it's definitely not good. And so one of the key things that I've been aiming to do with you guys is just kind of put all of this into perspective, especially, what's happening right here, because it does look like a really promising rally, and I obviously still think that we can continue to rise up. But we are in a situation, ladies and gents, according to what I'm seeing right now at least, where this could all turn south, and we still haven't broken a lot of the key, very, very long-term things that we need to break. Like I like to look at things like the Ichimoku cloud, for example, which is, huge, offering us resistance right now. I'm not really too worried about stuff like that, but it's still important. 200-week moving average. Look at this. This is quite an important line. And if we take a look at this on the log chart, this has been very important for Bitcoin as support, stretching all the way back to 2015 on this chart. Gave us support at the bottom of the bull market back in 2018. Gave us support at the bottom of the COVID crash with our candles back in 2020. And then take a look at this. We dipped below. We were actually talking about this indicator on the YouTube channel when we were slipping below it and then potentially getting rejected. So those of you that are subscribed, you're going to know all about that. We're just reaching up to potentially find resistance here again. This kind of stuff is really important to be keeping in mind because, again, a lot of people are going to be losing perspective of this stuff when we're looking at longer term time frames, I mean, with the short-term time frames, are going to be losing perspective of the stuff which is present on the longer-term time frames. But what I really like is that we're starting to see this shift in tides, especially on this quite large time frame like the weekly. But again, this kind of thing still very much useful on longer time frames, which I think is very, very important to keep in mind. Now, what I really like about this is that if we do see something like this really taking Bitcoin much higher, and we just take it back to the first chart that I showed you, I mean, the price increases that we saw for Bitcoin were astronomical. Let's actually go back here and take a look at it. For example, this was a huge one that we saw with the market. And if we kind of measure when this happened and then where Bitcoin ended up going, you know, kind of flipped green over here and taking it right up to this high over here, you know, when it peaked, it took Bitcoin up by 700%, right? So in other words, that's an 8 times return. Bitcoin went from a price of $106 up to a price of $867. Very, very big increase for Bitcoin right there. We take a look at some other instances like what happened on this occasion, and like I said, it's not perfect. It does fail from time to time, right? This ended up dropping down by 30%, but take a look at some of the next instances we had, like for example, what goes on right here, even a little bit right here, we did still get a move, right? Even a move like this would still be nice for Bitcoin, but I want to focus on this one obviously because it's a little bit more juicy. Bitcoin up until this kind of high right here, managing to rise something like 60% or up until the high, yeah, by about 120, which is all really, really interesting because you can see when we really start to build this indicator up and we keep it green for a long time, things actually stay bullish for Bitcoin for quite a while. On this occasion, up until its peak, which was pretty much right at the 20K peak, that was a 4,500% increase. So in this case, a 46 times return. Bitcoin goes from a price of 390 to a price of about 18,000, 20,000, whatever you want to draw it up to, which is really, really promising. Because again, if we're starting to look at something like that happening right now, this starts becoming really appealing. And the reason we're looking at with the title, potentially a 473%, is because that's what happened last time, right? The last time we had this flash in a very meaningful way, we also had it flash right here and it worked out for Bitcoin, but the last time it happened in a very meaningful way was around over here, and we were looking at a massively substantial pump. One of the things that's important to keep in mind with this indicator whenever it flashed in this bullish way is that we saw really big returns a lot of the time, right? Sometimes they were modest, they were still good, they were still welcome, right? If Bitcoin goes up by another 30% from here, let's just punch this in a calculator, 22 times 1.3, you know, we're still looking at a $28,000 Bitcoin, right? So that's still something that all of us are going to be very happy with, even if that's where Bitcoin peaks. That's still a great place to look at offloading Bitcoins if you are a bear, for example. But what's really, really interesting is where these big rallies come in. You know, I think a lot of people are going to be buying into these kind of narratives of actual big bull markets starting. And that's actually something I want to talk to you guys about a little bit. I was actually sitting with another one of my YouTuber friends here in Dubai a couple days ago. And, you know, I told him that I'm not entirely convinced, right? I definitely think we can go quite high. And I've been telling you that for a while, but I'm also aware that, yeah, this is quite likely to be a bull trap. You know, so far it's fitting like basically every fucking sign of a bull trap, every sign of a disbelief rally. One of the things that's important to keep in mind if we actually pull up the disbelief, the Wall Street cheat sheet chart, that's a mouthful, the Wall Street cheat sheet chart is, you know, we get our disbelief rallies, right? And everybody loves to talk about these right here. But what's important, this is so hard to read. Okay, this is a little bit better. What's important to take note of, man, okay, let me just open this up in a new tab. Open image in new tab right there. And we just zoom in on this a little bit, is, you know, it shows us the kind of the roller coaster of what happens with price, right? And, you know, it's worth noting that we didn't really have something like that, because if we did have something like this Wall Street cheat sheet after this high, we should have probably stuck in a high that's not so high, but, you know, kind of formed a mountain peak a little bit like that. That's exactly what happens right here. We didn't do that. As you can see, we just kind of absolutely fucking fell through the floor. So we didn't quite fit it perfectly, but that doesn't really matter. One of the key things that it shows you is that after a prolonged period of shit, which we can all agree we've been sitting through right here, you know, Bitcoin moves quickly, right? I know this wasn't, you know, compared to other markets, it wasn't that long, but this was still like a good 7 months. I mean, an incredibly long period of time. After that, we form what are called disbelief rallies a lot of the time. Now, this isn't perfect. We don't necessarily do this every time, and that's okay. But what's important to note is that if we are forming disbelief rallies like this, where everyone's saying this is a suckers rally, kind of what I'm talking about in terms of, you know, this just not necessarily, it's not necessarily going to last, basically. You know, is that we form many disbelief rallies. You know, if I could continue this chart forward, I would draw it like this. you know, and it would come back down, and then I would draw another disbelief rally, and then it would come back down, and it would draw another disbelief rally, and it would come back down. And all of these disbelief rallies are actually just wider parts, I should say smaller parts of the wider depression, really, that happens after the market tops out. I could just as easily argue that I could stretch this period of time out. I could make this period of time look much longer, and then I could say that this was a disbelief rally. This is really important because a lot of people will look at charts like this. They'll look at cheat sheets like this. They'll read books that show stuff like this, but without actually having the years of experience as a trader, you're just going to take this at face value and be like, okay, Bitcoin's there, you know, which is quite like I see this happening on Twitter all the time. People are like, where are we? The tricky thing, especially with the stage that we're in right now, is that it's so open to interpretation, right? Like I said, you could call this a disbelief rally and say that this is the end of the bear market just as much as you could call this a disbelief rally, right? It's really very much open to interpretation, and a lot of people don't take these things with that nuance, which is why it's important to be taking these grains of salt that you're getting on YouTube channels like this one right here, while everybody else is starting to party, while everybody else is looking at yacht bookings in Ibiza and all that stuff, because they're just getting carried away with all of the drama that's going on. I do still think that this looks like we could be in a very dangerous position, but at the same time, I'm not doubting the numbers here, guys. These are looking really, really promising. Here's this is actually 608% from measured right here. It really varies from where you draw it from because the moves are so big, but it doesn't really matter. You know, again, 4,300%, 1,100%, 6,500%. Look, we're probably not going to form anything as big as these numbers, right? Because Bitcoin is just a much bigger asset. It takes more money to move it. You already know the deal. But 200-300% move, you know what? What I think I've already been talking to you guys about a fair bit that actually makes a fair bit of sense is a rally up to a level like 40K. I already said that I think that's possible a long time ago, simply because 30K is the next kind of logical big area of like really, really big area of resistance for Bitcoin on this chart. But naturally, if we're going to be getting that high, you know, either, you know, just knowing Bitcoin now, and I think a lot of us here would agree, is that Bitcoin's either going to get close to it and then fail, or it's going to overshoot it and then fail. And I think it makes a lot of sense to overshoot it by a fair bit, because if you imagine a lot of buy orders come in at this level right here, that's a lot of liquidity for the market to take and cause max pain. It's rallies like this that cause max pain. You know, when we have really big kind of depressions that last a long time, like what happened, you know, right here, and I wouldn't call this really big or even necessarily a long time. We actually, looking back, we're quite lucky with what happened here because it only lasted like 3 months. But was this 3? I think it was like 6 actually. Yeah, it was about 4 months. You know, it didn't last particularly long, but then we formed this big rally and we continued to bleed out. This is obviously where a lot of people who would have, you know, bought Bitcoin up here, sold down here, bought back over here, and then sold down here, right? This is kind of what we're thinking, or even, you know, potentially a little bit higher, thinking this is it, Bitcoin's above 10K, and then bam, it crashes down and they sell over here. Very, very typical. Buy high, sell low. Buy high, sell low. Very, very typical behaviors for people in these markets, which I'm just worried that a lot of people are potentially going to be falling victim to right now. So, you know what? I like seeing this sign. I think it's a really promising sign. I think that if something like that happens again, it actually lines up with the whole kind of bear trap hypothesis that I've already been putting out on this channel since before the pumps even started, ladies and gents. If you were, you know, watching this channel regularly, you're already going to know the deal right there. You know, and on top of that, if it does turn out to be something that materializes into something very, very significant, well, you know, we can, you know, I mean, let's just for fun, let's look at where that can put us. If we form a similar rally to what we saw so far, we're knocking on the door of $100,000, right? So that's obviously very nice indeed. I think the key thing, though, that I want you guys to be focusing on at a time like this is, again, just kind of putting all these things into perspective. We're going to see a lot of these things flash, I would say, you know, during this period, not necessarily meaning that we're going to come out of the bear market. I hope I'm wrong. I'm very open to being wrong on something like this. But a lot of the time when we are in prolonged bear markets, we see really, really bullish things like this flash, and then nothing really materializes out of them. It's actually at times like this where we form our first time, where in this case it wouldn't be the first time because this indicator has failed a good number of times already. Only 3, but still, it's failed a few times. You know, it wouldn't be our first time where we form something like this and then it doesn't really turn into anything. But at the same time, people are going to be holding on to this kind of thing as hope. It's not just the accumulation distribution market, because accumulation distribution indicator, because a lot of other indicators are starting to show signs like this purely because they're lagging indicators, right? They're just going to show you, a representation of what might happen in the future based off what's happened in the past, which is why if you're on a short-term time frame, every single chart you can look at is going to look extremely bullish right now. Look, where is our support? It's below us. Where is our Ichimoku support? It's below us. Where are our essential moving averages? They're below us, I think. Let's wait for this to load. Yeah, they're below us, right? So very, very typical, right? Short-term time frames are going to show you this, but you zoom out a little bit more, look at what's going on the daily with these same moving averages. Okay, they're still below us, actually. That's pretty good. It's on the weekly where it turns into a problem because we've got this death cross forming here, which is potentially going to happen within a few weeks. I say potentially as if it's possible that this might not happen anymore. This is near guaranteed to happen at this point as far as I'm concerned, because the way these moving averages work, Bitcoin would have to go extremely fucking high, extremely high right now in order to pull this red line up and make sure that this orange line doesn't, the orange line would follow anyway. So I just don't see it happening, to be quite honest with you guys. And again, these are the kind of things which are really strong warning signs, right? A lot of you might have ignored it with the 200-week moving average right here, which again, as I showed you earlier on in the video, was essential for Bitcoin previously in finding support. And so naturally, we're going to be scared if we lose it as resistance and then even confirm it as resistance over here. But a lot of people aren't going to be focusing on this kind of thing when we start to see indicators like this flashing and seeing the results that they've pulled us before. So I want you guys to, I'm not saying that this kind of thing isn't going to happen. That's not what this YouTube video is about. But what I am saying is there's a lot of things that need to be taken with a grain of salt right now. And if you're not doing that, your wallet might hate you for it. So that is something which I think requires a little bit of thinking. I want to bring Prime XBT to your attention. This is a very, very cool platform that you can trade with Bitcoin on, and you get access to traditional finance markets like indices such as the S&P 500, commodities such as gold, silver, and oil, and Forex as well. I'm actually planning trades out for gold specifically. I've already informed VIP members and members inside of my free Telegram channel, which you can join by following this step on screen right here. Oh, what have I done? By following this link in the description right here. That takes you into my free Telegram channel. There's no sign up required. There's no download required. Super, super simple to get in. And we'll actually be pinging up to straight to your phone as well. So that was a possible trade setup that I've identified, which I've already shared inside of 𝗬𝗡𝗡𝗧 VIP, but occasionally some of that stuff does come into gold completely free of charge. So you can go ahead and join that as well. I am really looking at taking advantage of what's going on here. Gold has been looking really interesting over this last little bit. It's actually been rallying up very strongly, pretty much just week by week by week, just continuing to march forward like a soldier right here. Very impressive. Even on the daily time frame, I mean, it's very clear that people are just super interested in picking up gold. And obviously this is happening at the very same time that the dollar is dropping down, right? So completely expected here. If the dollar does collapse, I think that, playing a move on gold would be pretty obvious, pretty fair, pretty easy to do as well. The good thing about gold is obviously it's such a big market, that it's much less prone to manipulation than things like Bitcoin and Ethereum are, which can make it a little bit more of a, stress-free trading environment. Obviously, the only catch is that gold moves really slowly, basically, opposite to the dollar, and the dollar also moves really slowly. So I think that's something to keep in mind, and something that I'm definitely going to be watching out for. I'm already set to trade this on Prime XBT right here, and the cool thing when you use these guys is that you're going to be getting up to $7,000 in bonuses, and that's literally just whatever you deposit. When you use my link in the description down below, whatever you deposit, you're going to be getting 7% back as a bonus, which is free money that you can trade with. If you make any profits with that money, you can withdraw it, and if you don't make profit with that money, it doesn't matter because it's free money anyway. So I think that's really cool, well worth checking out. I hope you've enjoyed this one, guys. This was a little bit of a different one from me today. I brought something up to you that looks really promising, really, really interesting, and really just kind of dove deeply into why it may or may not work, and critiquing that analysis. It's an important skill. I do this with all of my analysis. I do this with all of my team's analysis as well. Obviously, it's not just me behind the 𝗬𝗡𝗡𝗧 brand. There's more than just me. Otherwise, you know what? It'd still be pretty good. But when it's more than just me, it's even better. But still, I'm critiquing all of this analysis very, very carefully, because ultimately, I mean, it's almost like science, right? Where the deal with science is, you want to come into it with a certain idea, but then your job is to actually disprove it. Your job is to poke holes in it and see if it still holds true. And that's what we do as traders and analysts as well. Obviously, you have to do this in the right way, because if you keep doing it too much, then, you may never commit to any trade, right? So this is all about, at the end of the day, taking a calculated risk And there's a lot that goes into it, but I think a video like this can, quite nicely convey what that mental battle even looks like in the first place. So if you found it useful, let me know. I'll make more videos like this. There's a lot that I can talk about. There's actually a lot of things going on in the market which people are paying attention to that I just kind of gloss over because to me they're not important, but I can bring them up and show you why I think they're not important. And you know what? That might actually be something that you guys are interested in. So I need to know. I need you to let me know with the comment section down below. If you have enjoyed this one, just smash up the likes as well. It really does help out. Make sure you subscribe and tick the bell to gain access to this content as it's published, because it is very, very time sensitive. And I'll see you all in the next one. Cheers.